Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and today we have a fun one for you. We're going to be talking about the nerfs and buffs in Honkai Star Rail. How do we bring some characters back into the game, and how do we take out some characters that are too overtuned, too overpowered, so we have a balanced game state. And if Hoyoverse, you're listening to this, maybe you can implement some of these changes in the new relics that you'll introduce in future, 3.0 meta changes, I don't know. But let's first things first, start off with King Yuan. I think King Yuan buff. He clearly needs a buff. I would change two things about him. He is very clunky right now because even after you hit that 10 stacks for Lightning Lord, you have to wait for him to slowly approach his turn. Change that. When he hits 10 stacks, immediately Lightning Lord takes action. Less clunky, way less clunky. Second thing, when King Yuan is affected by a crowd control debuff, Lightning Lord is unable to take action right now. Remove this, there's no necessity to have this. Now there's so many enemies with crowd control debuffs. Lightning Lord, separate entity from King Yuan, he can act wherever he is as long as King Yuan isn't dead. Why do I think that's possible? I mean, Lingsha already has the bunny Fu Yuan that is able to take actions even when Lingsha is crowd control. So just slap that onto King Yuan. I think it's way better, especially one is a DPS, right? So he needs to be taking action, if not use a massive DPS loss. So that's for King Yuan. Second one, Zealer. Both of these are 1.0 characters. They need tons of help right now. Main thing, new DPSs, new hunt characters, way better scaling, a lot more damage, and they offer so many other things rather than old characters. I will give her, thematically, right, to fit into the team, she's one of the fastest characters in the game by base stats. Give her some sort of scaling with additional speed, maybe above 120 speed. All excess speed also converts to crit damage, something like that. So that will make her still relevant. And one of the issues is as the game goes by, monsters become harder and harder, chunkier and chunkier. So I would change, for example, her talent ability, the resurgent state. Instead of killing a target, now let's make it easier for her to kill targets. If the enemy is 50% or less HP, instantly kill the unit. If it's a basic it's a normal mob. If it's an elite or boss, yeah, then maybe not. But if it's a normal mob, less than 50% HP, insta-kill on that small little target, and she gets to go again. And stop reducing this requirement that you can only proc once and a turn or something like that. Just make it as many times as possible. Pure Fiction, there's so many freaking enemies anyway. So that would probably make her a lot more relevant in the game state. Robin, clear nerf, very, very strong. To make her still relatively useful, I think one of the things that we can do to make her a little bit more down to earth is remove this ability to all other allies take action. If you can somehow remove this all other allies take action, then she will not form in a lot of fast and often team competitions where she pushes her whole team up, because this is a very, very strong action. Whole team-wide action advance is a team-wide Esther. So remove this, I think she becomes a lot more balanced. She needs a lot of stats as well because she is something like a damage dealer, so that will make it a lot more fair. For Lingsha and other healers, I want to talk about them all together because all healers generally suffer from the same problems in Honkai Star Rail, compared to the preservation characters. Overall, healers, for example, preservation characters, you slap a shield on them, right? You slap a shield on your character, you don't care about how much HP the character has. For healers, you have this inefficiency where if your character is already at max HP, there's no point healing them. Shielders just slap on an extra shield and make it even chunkier. But healers need some kind of over-heal utility. What I mean by that, if let's say you have max HP now, 4k HP, you heal a particular character, maybe the excess converts over into some sort of stats. Whether it's energy, maybe excess healing converts into energy, or maybe excess healing converts into action advancing based on a percentage of max HP of that particular character. I think that will make it a lot more valuable. Or you could even go the Honkai Star, the Genshin Impact route of the Ocean Hued Clam, which excess healing converts to damage. Maybe we can have a relic set for that. That will make healers a lot more relevant, because right now shielders are so much more efficient, right? You just slap on that massive shield, you increase the HP of even squishies. So there's a lot of preference currently in the game to go for preservation over abundance character in that last sustain slot as well. So all healers, same thing. Next up, we have Jiaoqiu. I think Jiaoqiu needs a buff. One of the things is he's a great Acheron support, but outside of that, he wants more performance. What I'll do is I'll bring E2 into his base kit. Maybe reduce the multipliers. Make him at least usable on the same level as Kafka and Black Swan in DOT teams. I think that's all he needs to become very relevant. So buff, clear buff. Ruan Mei, nerf, definitely nerf, right? One of the best things about her, or worst things in the case, since we're trying to bring everyone back to norm, is she offers too much and he has too much uptime on her abilities. She is skill point positive because her skill here lasts for 3 turns. So you have 100% uptime on this damage increase that also scales with a break effect, and weakness break efficiency increase, 100% uptime of it. I want to reduce this, maybe force this into a lasting for 2 turns so that she's forced to use her skill more often, making her a skill point hungry character and not also be a battery at the same time. Because in a 3-turn rotation, is basic skill, which is a net positive of +1. She does too much. So make her skill point neutral or negative. I think that's my angle of bringing Ruan Mei back down to earth a little bit. Acheron. Acheron's a fun one. Let's do a mixed one for it, right? At E0 is very different from E2 because different restrictions, different requirements. I think that I would bring her E2 into her base kit. Bring E2 in base kit, but there's a caveat, right? A huge caveat. So you only just need like 1 nihility at all times in the team composition, but the caveat is you can only play with 3 characters on the team, making sense of that like nihility thing. So you can only play with 3 units, whereas your other units have 4, but you get E2 in your base kit. So is there a buff? Is there a nerf? I think it's more of like a nerf, right? Since she is very strong, but at least less requirements. 1 character totally gone. Or maybe to make it fair, is like you don't have to have any nihility in your team. E2 is immediately in your base kit, but you play with 1 less character, so you can play with whatever character you want, and you get the full buff of that nihility buff that you get. I think that's like quite fair to nerf Acheron that way. Buff Kafka. For sure, you want to buff Kafka. One of the biggest problems is her unique shock ability comes from the light cone. Her base kit doesn't apply a unique shock. You can see over here, it's just some generic shock. So how I will buff her, I'll change this shock to make it unique so that she's able to play in like other characters. It's able to like stack with other shock units and even her signature. Not the same as her signature preferably, maybe it's like something else, something unique to her. But that's probably how I will buff Kafka to make her even more relevant. Feixiao, this unit is super versatile, definitely nerf. She can be played into so many teams, a lot of free-to-play teams as well. I want to restrict that from her. So how I'll do it is I'll put some kind of like, we don't even have faction requirements in Honkai Star Rail. So make Feixiao forced to play with characters like Jiaoqiu, forced to play with characters like Mozi. This is how I will actually like mix in. And maybe because then you're saying, oh, but then these characters, if they don't do well in future, then she's like totally useless. Let's give like some scaling to her also. She can, any Xianzhou character from the Xianzhou arc can be played instead of these 2 particular units. I think that'll be quite fun. That at least it restricts her versatility down a little bit more. She can be played into like less teams. It's at least some sort of restriction. That's probably how I would nerf Feixiao to bring her a little bit down. Next up, Fu Xuan. Fu Xuan, clear nerf. Why is she like good is because she has that effective HP, she takes like damage reduction for your whole team, and if you can keep her uptime out, she basically has a full heal all the time. I don't like that. I want to bring that down to make it more moderated. How I'll do it is every time she uses her talent and she flips to full HP, she would lose 5% of her max HP for the remainder of the battle. So every time you flip full HP, minus 5%. So she only can do it maximum of 20 times before she will have like 1 HP or something like that. So you cap it off at the number of times she can flip a battle, and at the same time, remove this 12% crit rate. It's too unnecessary. Nope, it's pointless. It's just additional stats. We don't want that. Too overtuned. So let's just remove that as well from her, and she'll probably be a lot more manageable than much more fairer. Boothill. Compared to other DPSs, I'll probably buff him actually. What I'll do for him is I'll give him some sort of a cowboy dual-like mechanic that improves on his current state. So now it currently caps up to like 3 stacks. What I'll do is make stacks unlimited, and you get like damage increases based on the number of stacks. He can dual, like keep stacking the duels as long as he can keep killing targets. And every time he kills a dual target is something like Zealer, where you kill a dual target, you act again, and you can keep like acting. So he's at least like more usable in game modes like Pure Fiction, where you can kill squishies, move again, so you get some utility out of there. Probably how I'll change him to make him a little bit more relevant right now, basically like Zealer. Argenti, I think I want another faction-based synergy, a buff for Argenti. If in future any Knights of Beauty attacks, Argenti also follow-ups and attacks together with them. I think that would be like a really, really great factor. Then you can like play into the whole thematic, and he also has a lot of utility. But if you don't talk about like future Knights of Beauty synergy and like one ally attack, all attack together kind of thing, probably I would, in present, the only thing I would change, basic attack, the splash. Maybe less damage compared to his AoE. Maybe the AoE can like increase the numbers. But if this was like half, like 40%, but it is AoE, then at least you get the AoE physical break, which is nice enough. And I think that is great value because he's then able to like contribute more skill points to the rest of the team too. Yunli. Probably Yunli's ability, the trickiest part is of course timing the ultimate for her. You have to parry and just nice before the enemy or your ally takes turns. If you don't, you lose a lot of DPS. What I'll do is I'll change this such that it becomes, when you cast this, it becomes like a passive, like one passive stack available. Anytime an enemy attacks, you use the passive stack and then you like counter. So regardless of when the enemy attacks you, you will always like have a longer turn up. You will have like this general passive, and it only like lasts one time. So I think that will make her like way better already, like way more useful, rather than just having a timing issue where you just do it before a certain strike or something like that. So that is what I'll do for Yunli. For next character, Firefly. You guys know it, right? This is a clear nerf. She's very strong. The reason why also is because she plays into very cheap and cost-effective teams. Aside from Lingsha, let's just ignore Lingsha's arrival. Gallagher, let's say, is in the healer slot. You have a character, for example, like Harmony MC, who is totally for free. And then you have a character, for example, like Ruan Mei, which most people have. So she costs very little to get going, and her best teams cost so little. Super cost-effective. I want to make this a little bit more difficult for her by bringing her back down to like, in terms of cost to function. Remove her sustain. Her skill no longer heals her. And at the same time, when she is in her out state, every time she attacks or takes action, you set the entire team's HP. Something like Jingliu. So you are forced to play with a much stronger sustain character. Like instead of like Gallagher, maybe you're forced to play with like Lingsha, who has a 5-star stats. So her teams become a little bit more expensive. If not, she becomes a bit more squishy to run. I think that's probably how I would like nerf Firefly, to be in balance with like a lot of other characters as well. Now, nerfing and buffing characters means that they are good right now, because this is how you actually will make them as even as they can. So the other characters, Topaz and Numby. Here's a fun one, right? Topaz and Numby will have this in line with investment thematic for the long run. If you play Topaz and Numby in the final stage of any MOC Pure Fiction or Apocalyptic Shadow, if you play whatever score you get from her, you get double Stellar Jade rewards. So let's say you have like, everyone gets 800, but you play Topaz and Numby, every cycle you can do it once. So every cycle you get 860 if you manage to clear the floor with Topaz and Numby. I think that's like insane good value, because over the period of long term, you can actually make a character, the amount you spend on a character back, which is interesting concept. Don't know why they don't do that, but that'll be fun. Himeko buff. I think I will buff Himeko. Firstly, basic attack, skill, ultimate, everything considers as follow-up attacks, and her talent passive, regardless of whether you hit an elite or squishy monster, it will always proc as long as a break is being done. So very break focus, very follow-up focus. Probably how I'll bring her back into the meta. Jingliu is probably going to have to be a buff as well, because she doesn't fit into the current game state like a lot of the other meta DPSs. Mainly because if you are not ice weakness, enemies not ice weakness, she does fall off very quickly. So what I'll do is when she is in the special state, this spectral transmigration state, her first attack implants ice weaknesses on all the enemies that she hits, and also applies a frostbite state, which lowers their ice resistance. So complicated. Second attack, then you are able to like deal some ice break damage on them with the enhance, and all of them have ice rest. So probably that's all she needs. First strike in her enhanced state applies ice weakness, lowers ice rest. Second strike is when you deal more damage. So that, I think, probably will help her come into the game a bit more as well. YANKING. Now, you think this is hard to make him relevant. It's actually, I think, quite simple. What I'll do is I will make him into a freeze specialist. There are very little characters in the game that apply freeze very reliably, and YANKING is actually one of them that could possibly be that. So firstly, his follow-up swords that has now a RNG chance of proccing, 100% the follow-up chance of the swords come in, so he can play into like more follow-up attacking teams. And every attack, like basic attack, skill, out that he does, has a 100% base chance to freeze the enemy. I think that will make him like a freeze specialist. Even if he does very trash damage, he might be very useful like in a remembrance based run. That could be quite fun to make him a little bit more meta in the game as well. Gepard buff versus Aventurine, he's very different, right? But how I'll do it is, as also with thematic, instead of having his out skill with defense, I will give him a special shield that blocks one instance of damage. But not only do you block the instance of damage, you reflect it, maybe like scaling based on his defense or something like that as well. So damage reflected, one instance of block only in his ultimate ability. So that way you can build him for more offensive stats, you can build him for his out, you have it up, you block one big hit from the enemy, you reflect that damage, he becomes more of an offensive support as well. So that'll be quite fun. Probably how I'll change Gepard instead of just giving him a thick shield and not too much else. Black Swan. Black Swan's actually really very good already. I will buff her, but I will give her increase in her Arcana stacks. One of the issues with her to keep up the rest of the DPS is this freaking stacks too slowly to hit at 50. In normal modes, it's very difficult to hit this 50. So I would actually like increase this to everything is like double stacks or maybe triple stacks, so you can get it up faster, and then she can do a lot more damage very quickly as well. So that's probably how I like buff Black Swan. For sure is a buff. Blade, let's do something cool. Every time Blade dies in battle, he can revive. So he can revive up to 5 times. And each time he dies in this 5 times, you get a 20% attack buff. So you can get massive amount of damage buff when you get him killed in battle. So instead of trying to keep your teammates alive where we are used to, now you have to have characters that actually stay alive. Super fun, right? Or you have to actually try to like kill Blade while you are trying to fight, and the rest of the team have to stay alive. I think that'll be an interesting mechanic to have. Then he gets a lot of damage buff, so he keeps up with a lot of the modern DPSs today, while also introducing like a new style. I think that's quite fun. Bronya is actually not bad already, but I probably will buff her. Maybe a bit more utility in her out. 20% action advance in her out. Just the 20%, doesn't need to be too much. And perhaps her E4 is placed into a base kit, where she deals follow-up attack when you are attacking a weakness enemy or something like that. So at least you get a bit more damage from her on field, rather than just being like a hyper carry bot that people just funnel her into your like rest of your teammates. At least she might be able to use that massive like crit damage stat to do some damage as well in her follow-up attack, basic attack kind of style. So that'll be like quite interesting to buff her. Jade buff. I would buff Jade such that maybe Debt Collector can be applied to more than one target, not just one. That will help her dish out a lot more damage in terms of like building stacks and stuff like that. So Jade buff. Sparkle's actually quite balanced. I think out of all the characters, she's probably closer to being like relatively balanced in the game state right now. But if I were to change her kit, I would probably only change one thing. I would action advance 100%. Make this 100% action advance. But you don't want people like cheese strat with Bronya and Sparkle to have like infinite turn order, right? So what I would do is I would say, yeah, you'll keep this that she can't do it herself, but you cannot use an action advance thing on Sparkle or the target that you casted it on for one turn. So you prevent that infinite loop between like Bronya and Sparkle. So that's how I will buff Sparkle. Silverwolf, let's buff her. She needs a buff at this point. Everyone has like weakness implant, which is makes Silverwolf like a lot less relevant nowadays. So how I will implant Silverwolf is, let's just put it like, let's say skill. Now she drops in weaknesses based on her team composition. Instead of single target, she drops in AoE weakness, but it's RNG basis. So if the enemy has 3 weaknesses on them, 3 elemental weaknesses, it drops in at random 1 of the 4, and it's an AoE. So you have an RNG chance, you can cast it more often to keep, but then at least you have a chance of like getting the weakness you want from all the enemies. It's an AoE type. I think that'll be like a little bit more fun, makes her a little bit more relevant, so that you have team-wide weakness implanting, which is quite good, I think. Harmony MC. This character definitely needs a nerf. Too efficient, free character, everyone has it. Too much uptime on the out. I would increase the out energy cost and remove this energy refund on the Trailblazer. So at least it's not so cost effective, because Firefly teams are just too efficient because of the value that you get from all the cheaper characters in the game right now. So nerf Harmony MC. Probably my rating. Too good for its value, for the price. This is supposed to be a standard character, right? Aventurine, definitely nerf. I think Aventurine right now, he plays into many teams. He's very good in most of the teams that he plays into. I would just simply remove debuffing into his kit. So no more debuffing in the kit. Just remove every single debuff. All he is a shielder, counter attacker, and that pretty much will like put him in line and more or less like balanced already. So it limits the team composition he can play in. You very clearly distinguish other characters like Lingsha, who can play into like more teams. Then you also give advantage to some of the abundance characters versus the preservation units. Imbibitor Lunae, buff. Reduce dependency on skill points. Right now, in this game state, his team compositions are too restricted because you want to play him like Sparkle to funnel him. So maybe every time he takes action, he gets 1 stack of his this special here, which is the Squama Sacrosancta, every time he takes action. So it helps him reduce his overall cost a little bit more. And maybe every time he uses his enhanced basic attack to the maximum stacks, you gain back like 1 skill point. So a refund, a little bit more refund. His damage isn't like massive anymore anyway. So getting him at least a bit more useful now in the meta, probably how I'll buff him, by reducing his dependency on skill points. A few more characters here. We have, who's next? We have, lots of talk about him already, Welt, in terms of the healing section. Welt, I want him to be like a debuff specialist. So he's, not only does he do speed debuffing, I want him to do like attack debuffing, defense debuffing, damage amplification and stuff. More people will likely be able to use him if he's like the unit that you go to for debuffs. Maybe not too massive since it's a standard character, but I think applying more debuffs than just slow alone will probably make him fit into a lot more teams, because you can then play him like Acheron if he can like RNG defense shred your enemies too. That would be quite interesting to see. Doctor Ratio. Doctor ratio is actually quite balanced. I think it's like quite close to the middle point in my opinion out of like the DPSs. I probably will buff him. He is one of the rare characters that doesn't have speed up in his kit. A lot of hunt characters have some sort of way to like buff their speed. Doctor ratio is not one of them. Since he is like a thematic, right? He's like a smart guy. Let him scale with buffs. So not only does he debuff the enemies, but and scale with like debuffs on the enemies, but if he have multiple buffs, he increases his speed based on the number of buffs that he has up to maybe a certain point or something like that. That'd be quite fun. So how I'll change Doctor ratio, buff, more speed in his kit. The last character on this list is Clara, and of course you're finding value in this video so far. Thank you again so much. Do like and subscribe if you want to see more of such content. Appreciate your attention. But last but not least, Clara. How I'll change this character? I want to change her into a utility specialist because we already have Yunli, right, who is a damage dealer. 100% uptime from counter from Savarok if you use your ult. So maybe like a 3-turn uptime. There's no like cap. You can do it as many times as is possible. Reduce the damage. So you just do a little bit. She can be used as a counter for break effect. But at the same time, instead of being a damage dealer, I want her to be a sustain. Her skill heals in an AoE. Her talent maybe gives damage reduction for the rest of the team. That way, she's like a defensive, offensive hybrid. She becomes like more of a defensive character in the game that counters a lot and focuses on counter, protecting the team. I think that would be like way better in my opinion. Anyways, guys, of course, Hoiverse doesn't nerf or buff characters after their release unless in special occasions. But these are some things that they might actually apply into relics in future. But who knows? Thank you again so much for watching. At this point, if you like this video, check out these 2 other videos right here, which you might like as well. See you in the next video.